Welcome to Muse Art Consultancy Homeschool Art Sessions. This week we're going to be looking at macro flower illustration. So we're going to be thinking about what is macro photography and why do we use it? Why is it important to use? Well, macro photography basically looks at things really up close, whether it be insects or flowers or cells, things in the natural world. The macro photography is a brilliant tool for working from when looking at flowers. Now, before we do our flower, we're going to add a title to our page. So from about 5 centimeters down, you're going to draw an arch on either page, as you can see that I'm doing here, slightly curved, matching either side. And this is how we would expect you to do titles in your sketchbook at secondary school, taking up no more than 5 centimeters at the top of each page, nice and neat. And as you go through school, being able to play around a little bit with fonts, as you can see that I've done here. So I use a website sometimes called 1001 Fonts. There's lots of other free websites you can use as well to find really interesting fonts to help you think about how to create your title. What I do first is I draw my pencil on with my title on with pencil even, and then I go across with one of my fine liner pens, my brush fine liner pen afterwards, to make it look a little bit more bold. And then once the pen has dried, you rub out the pencil like it was never there. So you have a really neat title at the top of your page, and it looks lovely and bold and fits with your theme. I do suggest to try and use script type fonts are really lovely to use. You can use bold fonts, and also you can use fonts that link to what it is that you're looking at. So a nice script font matches quite well with the nature journal. So once you've done your title and you're typing in a macro photo, you'll find so many really interesting photographs of right up close in the middle of a flower. I'd like you to try and use any one that you would like. Try and challenge yourself. I've decided to use this lovely pink flower because it's actually sitting on a background that's really similar to what my background is in my sketchbook, so I thought it would be quite a good idea. Now what I'm doing first is I'm mapping on the outlines, looking at the shapes and the form of my flower using one of my thin fine liner pencils, looking at the leaves, looking at the overall structure, and thinking again about the composition of the page. So I had a really lovely section here that was free, that would be able to be filled with a lovely illustration, and I thought that this would be quite a nice space to use. So you're looking at the form, like I said, the shape, and how it in general fills the page. Think about what's behind, what's in front, what's going to take the focal point. Is there a focal point of your flower that you're working with? Always keep checking in with the image that you're working from to make sure what you're drawing is actually accurate and you're not just making it up. Try and keep looking, keep checking in. You can use a pen to draw on the outlines here, or you could use a pencil. Now what I'm doing here now is I'm using a paint marker pen, a white paint marker pen. You can use just white paint if you have it to give yourself a base. I quite like using a white marker pen. It gives you a bit more freedom on details sometimes, and it's quite nice to use as a bit of a change really. You can buy white paint marker pens from any good art shops on the internet, or from many good local art shops you may venture into. So when you're using a marker pen, you have to keep pressing it down every now and then to let the flow of paint come through the nib. So I'm block filling in my petals of my flower now. So using my paint marker pen to block fill in the petals and the stem, trying to keep my nib strokes as opposed to my brush strokes smooth, so when I go over with my paint afterwards I have a nice smooth base to be working on. Sometimes I just think actually white paintings by themselves can look quite beautiful, and this is one of the great things about art, is that you explore these different outcomes and you come across them sometimes by mistake and think to yourself, actually that would look quite nice by itself. I'm now going to use my watercolour pens. You can use your watercolours if you have a watercolour set at home. Watercolour pens again are a really interesting thing to use because you don't actually get as depth of colour. You don't have any control over how thick or how thin the paint comes out like you would do using a watercolour palette. When you're using a watercolour pen, it flows through the pen in one way. Squeezing it doesn't make any difference. I'm sure it does with some watercolour pens, but with these ones it doesn't, sadly. So I'm starting to build up my colours here with my watercolours, and I can see that where I've used my white pen, it wasn't as smooth as what I thought it would be. So I'm going to be smoothing in with my fingers as I'm painting. So I started adding some orange, some reds. I'm going to start smoothing ever so slightly to create a little bit more of a smooth effect on my petals. So hopefully by this point now in these videos, you will have a little bit more of an understanding as to how to start drawing a flower or leaves on your page, looking at the shape, looking at the form, thinking about the composition of your page, and hopefully you would have learned some techniques that you feel confident now playing around with and experimenting with to create a really lovely composition. You can use watercolours by themselves. You can use watercolours on top of white paints. You can use watercolours to embed, like we did with our photo that we stuck down and with the leaves. You can use pencils and white pencils to create really beautiful tonal studies. And I'm going to be teaching you next week how to use biros. So back to these flowers that I'm looking at now. I'm now adding the colour to the stem, going in now thinking about where the other shadows are, because remember, adding tone is what creates the illusion of something being three-dimensional. Now, one of the things I love about building a composition is you may have some drawings that are stronger and more successful than other drawings that you've worked on your page. When you're working with a composition, you're not just looking at one picture or painting by itself, you're looking at it in relation to all the other pictures around it. And I think it's actually quite a successful double page, so I'm really proud of what I've looked at. Now next week I'm going to be teaching you all about how to use a biro in line drawing, in mark making, in building lots of interesting Zentangle patterns and working with photography to build that. The first thing we're going to do is some biro work in our nature journal, and then we're going to move on with those techniques and create some really fun and interesting artwork with our biros. Thank you for watching today. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you are filled with ideas as to the different ways you can start doing some drawing and painting in your sketchbook. Please do share your work. It will be wonderful to see what you have been up to. And thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.